Terminated. Effective immediately. 5 words. That's all Nathan Cross, CFO of Orion Biotech, said before sliding the envelope across my desk and walking out. No handshake, no warning, just a decision that detonated a $312 million acquisition before anyone knew it. I'm Laura Jensen, 41, Senior R&D Director at Orion Biotech, and I just got fired 48 hours before a $1.15 million performance payout and 69 hours before our merger with Novofarm Industries was set to close. I stared at the letter. High-grade ivory paper, corporate letterhead, and Boston blue foil, time-stamped 10 a.m. Wednesday. My payout was due Friday at 10 a.m. I checked my smartwatch. Exactly 48 hours. Nathan thought he was clever. Cut me before payday, save a 7-figure bonus. But he just pulled the pin on something far bigger than he realized. That bonus wasn't just cash, it was the trigger clause connected to Orion's most valuable IP, Helix 9, a gene sequencing algorithm licensed under my name since 2013. When I built it, our founder, Dr. Harold Trent, made sure my ownership was protected. He used to say, you can't innovate in biotech unless trust runs deeper than profit. So he wrote a legal clause. Simple, airtight. Once the bonus hits Jensen's account, proprietary rights for Helix 9 automatically revert to her in full. Not symbolic, binding. Without Helix 9, Orion's data engine was worthless, and without that engine, Novofarm's merger collapsed. Nathan had just armed a bomb with his own signature. I signed the termination notice calmly, slid it back across the desk, and said nothing. He looked confused. Maybe he expected tears or outrage. I just gathered my bag, my badge, and walked toward the elevator. Security was waiting in the lobby like I'd been caught stealing DNA samples. I nodded politely. On my desk upstairs, I'd left a small silver hard drive. Nathan saw it as I passed his glass office. He smirked. He thought it was my backup, the one holding years of Helix 9 data. It wasn't. That drive had been empty since 2018. The real data? Encrypted behind biometric access, fingerprint, and retinal scan, locked inside my home lab 15 miles away in Seattle's Magnolia district. Outside, the city looked normal. Traffic humming, gray sky, Starbucks cups everywhere. No one could tell that in 2 days, one of the biggest biotech mergers on the West Coast would implode. When I got home, Ethan was sanding the deck. He dropped his tools when he saw my face. Laura, what happened? I got fired. 10 a.m. sharp. Nathan delivered the message himself. Effective immediately. Ethan's been my husband for 16 years. He's an architect, steady, pragmatic, the opposite of my storm. We have a 13-year-old daughter, Sophie, and a mortgage that looks like a second child. He said down the sander. Because of the merger? Because of the bonus, I said. They think cutting me saves $1 million. And the clause? They just activated it. He stared. So in 48 hours, I own Helix 9, not Orion. And the merger? Dead, or at least bleeding out. He sat beside me on the porch steps. You've been running yourself into the ground for that company. Maybe it's time to let it burn. I looked out over the yard. You sound like Harold. Dr. Trent? Yeah, he used to say the same thing. If the wrong people take control, the science dies. He was right. Harold founded Orion 25 years ago in a rented lab behind a strip mall. When I joined, I was 26. Fresh PhD, still idealistic enough to believe science fixed the world. Harold saw something in me. Maybe drive, maybe obsession. He took me under his wing, taught me that ethics mattered more than earnings calls. When corporate sharks circled, he built legal traps around his best scientists, protection clauses. The one in my contract was the most elaborate. And now it was ticking down like a quiet fuse. I went inside, opened my laptop, and entered my personal credentials. A timer flashed on screen, 47 hours, 56 minutes, 22 seconds until payout. Then the clause would execute automatically through Orion's payroll blockchain ledger. Once confirmed, ownership transfer would process in real time to the U.S. Patent Office. Digital failsafe. Harold had died 5 years ago, but in that moment, it felt like he was still protecting me. Ethan leaned over my shoulder. You're not really going to let them crash, are you? I don't have to let them. They did it themselves. He frowned. What about Novofarm, jobs, the rest of your team? If Novofarm had done its due diligence, they'd know Section 9C exists. Nathan didn't read it. None of them did. He gave me that look, half concern, half warning. Laura, this is going to get messy. It already is. I brewed coffee and opened a secure channel. One Herald had built for emergencies. A single outgoing email, pre-scheduled, encrypted with triple keys. If my termination stood through Friday 10 a.m., it would auto-send to Nova Farms legal counsel, attaching Section 9C and Helix 9 ownership documentation. Translation: merger nullified. I clicked ARM protocol. Status: active. Then I checked Orion's internal servers. Access revoked. Of course, they thought that cut me off from everything. They forgot I designed the entire security architecture. I still had mirror access from the sandbox network Herald had insisted on keeping for bad days. This was a very bad day. I scrolled through the executive feed, panic disguised as confidence. Nathan had already scheduled a 3 p.m. strategic realignment briefing. Translation: firestorm control. I almost laughed. You can't realign when your core algorithm is about to vanish. That evening after Sophie went to bed, Ethan found me still at the computer. "You're not sleeping," he said quietly. "I will when this is over." "When it's over or when they're ruined?" I looked up. "I didn't start this." "No," he said softly, "but you're going to finish it." He wasn't wrong. Somewhere downtown, Nathan was probably popping champagne thinking he'd saved Orion $1 million. By Friday morning, that savings would cost them 300 times that. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened a photo of Harold and I from 2015. We were at a biotech conference in San Diego, him in his worn leather jacket, me grinning with a poster tube in hand. He'd written on the back, "Guard the code like it's your own DNA." I whispered, "I did, Harold. Still am." The next morning, I woke up before dawn. Checked the clock. 36 hours, 44 minutes remaining. An email alert blinked. 2 missed calls from Nova Farms' compliance officer and 1 from a business journalist. Rumors were spreading already. I ignored them and opened my secure dashboard. All systems green, encryption intact. Then I saw it. An attempted remote login from Orion's HQ, timestamped 3 a.m. Unauthorized credentials. Nathan's IT team was trying to crack the Helix 9 vault. They had no idea the system was layered with a quantum key honeypot. The moment they failed 3 authentication sequences, their IP address was logged and mirrored to my private cloud. They just confirmed their panic. I smiled, finished my coffee, and called my attorney. "Patrick, it's Laura." "I was expecting this call. I need you ready by Friday 10 a.m. Transfer confirmation should trigger." He paused. "And when it does, file ownership update to the USPTO within 60 seconds. Then send courtesy copies to Nova Farms board." A beat. "You realize that kills the merger instantly." "I'm counting on it." After the call, I stood by the window, Seattle drizzle streaking down the glass. Down below, commuters rushed through crosswalks, umbrellas colliding. Life kept moving. Nobody knew that one woman in a quiet house on Magnolia Hill held the match that could burn down a $300 million empire. The clock ticked down. 31 hours, 12 minutes. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and whispered to no one. They shouldn't have underestimated me. By Thursday morning, the first tremor hit. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed with a private alert from an old contact inside Nova Farm. The subject line read, "Something's off. Your name's everywhere." I opened it and found a thread of frantic emails between executives, half redacted, half panicked. Words like breach, ownership, and contractual risk exposure jumped out at me. It had begun. Orion's leadership had realized Helix 9 wasn't technically theirs to sell, and that meant the entire merger deal, all $312 million of it, was hanging by a thread, and that thread was wrapped around my signature. Ethan came downstairs, tie loosened, coffee mug in hand. "You look like someone who's about to set off fireworks." "More like watch them," I said, scrolling through the leaks. He frowned at the headline flashing on my monitor. "Orion Biotech merger faces possible IP dispute." "You leaked this?" "No," I said. "Nova Farm did. They're trying to get ahead of the fallout." "Laura," he warned, but I cut him off. "Don't. I didn't do anything illegal. I protected my work. The rest is them catching up to reality." Across the city, Orion's boardroom was on fire, figuratively, but I could almost hear the shouting. Nathan would be pacing, veins bulging, trying to calm investors. He underestimated how fast the corporate world circulates fear. Once whispers of intellectual property dispute hit the market, stocks twitch, investors retreat, and reporters smell blood. I didn't need to strike. Momentum had already turned against them. All I had to do was stand still. Still, I couldn't help myself. I logged into the sandbox portal, my secret digital window into Orion's systems. Their emergency meeting notes were being uploaded in real time. The board was scrambling to find proof of corporate ownership for Helix 9, but every archived document pointed back to one fact. The algorithm was registered under my personal innovation license. And worse, Nathan had signed my termination letter before confirming the bonus deferral with payroll. That made it breach of contract. The very clause he was trying to avoid had already executed, digitally sealed. There was no undo button. By noon, reporters were calling my old work number. When I didn't respond, they started reaching out through my university alumni page, my LinkedIn, even Sophie's school office. I turned my phone off and stared out the window. I wasn't craving attention. I wanted justice. For years, I'd worked 18-hour days while Nathan and his ilk cashed bonuses triple mine. I designed systems that saved the company from collapse more than once. And still, they treated me as a liability. Too principled, too emotional, too female. They never thought I'd be capable of striking back because I didn't fit their image of power. They were about to learn that revenge didn't always roar. It could whisper through code and kill quietly. That evening, a black sedan pulled up outside my house. I watched through the blinds as two men in tailored suits got out, badges glinting under the porch light. "Miss Jensen?" the taller one called. Ethan came into the hallway, face tense. "They're not police," I whispered. He nodded, ready to step forward, but I opened the door first. "Can I help you?" I asked. "We're representatives from Orion Biotech. The company would like to discuss a potential reinstatement offer." Mr. Cross suggested, "No," I cut him off. "You can tell Nathan Cross that reinstating me doesn't change the ledger or the law." The shorter man shifted uneasily. "Miss Jensen, this situation could become complicated. You'd be better off negotiating directly." I smiled faintly. "You came here at night to negotiate? Tell Nathan next time, send a lawyer, not messengers in black cars." Then I shut the door. Ethan locked it behind me. "They're getting desperate," he muttered. "Desperate people make mistakes," I said. At midnight, I opened the sandbox again. Orion's internal chat logs were chaos. Executives arguing, legal counsel warning of irreversible IP damage, and Nathan issuing half-coherent orders. One message from the board chair caught my eye. "Freeze all outgoing transfers. Halt merger communication. We need to verify ownership status before Novafarm pulls out." It was already too late. I checked Novafarm's press site. Their official statement had just dropped. "Due to unresolved intellectual property inconsistencies involving Orion Biotech's Helix 9 system, we are postponing merger finalization pending legal review." Postponing, not canceling, yet. But once the bonus transferred to my account, that pending would turn into terminated. I leaned back, heart pounding, a mix of triumph and sorrow swelling inside me. I didn't want to destroy Orion. I wanted to expose it. But sometimes exposure and destruction walked hand in hand. Harold had warned me years ago. Corporate science runs on greed until it runs into truth. Then it burns. I could see the flames flickering already. The next morning, I woke to find my inbox flooded. Dozens of journalists, analysts, and ex-colleagues wanting my side of the story. I ignored them all, except one. A woman named Camille Rhodes, investigative reporter for TechWatch Weekly, had left a message that struck differently. "Miss Jensen, I know about Section 9C, and I know what Orion did to suppress the clause. If you want the truth out, not gossip, not drama, call me." I hesitated. Camille had a reputation for precision, not sensationalism. I called her. "You've done your homework," I said. "Enough to know you're not the villain here. Then you also know how dangerous this story is. That's why it needs to be told." I met her that afternoon near a small cafe near the waterfront. She looked exactly how I expected. Sharp eyes, neutral suit, a journalist who learned that silence extracts more truth than questions. "You have documentation?" she asked. "Everything," I said, sliding over an encrypted drive. "Payroll records, patent filings, and Nathan's termination timestamp. It's all time-synced." She nodded. "You realize this will blow up by tomorrow morning." "That's the point." You won't be able to control it once it's out. I smiled faintly. Control is overrated. When I got home, Ethan was pacing in the kitchen. You leaked it, didn't you? Not leaked, shared. Laura, this could ruin people. It already did, just not the right ones yet. He sighed, rubbing his temples. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, I said, glancing at the countdown on my laptop, the system pays me, and when it does, Helix 9 becomes mine. At exactly 11 p.m., I poured another glass of wine and watched Seattle's skyline shimmer under the rain. Down there, Orion's offices were probably glowing like a war room. Screens flashing, lawyers arguing, executives clawing for a solution that didn't exist. And somewhere in that chaos, Nathan was realizing what Harold always meant. You can't fire the foundation and expect the building to stand. I closed my eyes, whispered Harold's words again, and waited for the dawn that would end it all. By sunrise, the world would know the truth, and by tomorrow at 10, Orion Biotech would belong to history. Friday morning began with thunder rolling across the Seattle skyline as if the sky itself wanted front-row seats to the collapse. I woke before dawn, pulse steady, heart oddly calm. The countdown clock on my laptop read 02:13:45. 2 hours and 13 minutes until the bonus executed, until Helix 9 became mine again, until Orion's empire, built on deceit and arrogance, crumbled for good. Ethan stood by the window, watching the rain wash across the deck. "You're really doing it," he said quietly. "I'm not doing anything. I'm just letting math and law do what they were designed to." He turned, eyes searching mine. "And when it's over?" I looked down at the laptop. "When it's over, I'll finally breathe." My phone vibrated non-stop. Unknown numbers, blocked calls, voicemails from reporters, lawyers, probably even Nathan himself. I ignored all of them. I didn't need their noise. I'd built a system that spoke in silence. Clean code, immutable signatures, undeniable truth. At 8 a.m., I received a single email from Camille Rhodes. Subject line, "They're cracking." I opened it to find a link, an exclusive TechWatch Weekly expose already live. Orion Biotech faces IP scandal. Insider clause threatens $312 million merger. The article was detailed, surgical, devastating. It outlined Section 9C, included snippets of my termination letter, and cited sources confirming Nathan's breach of contract. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire across the biotech sector. Stock alerts flooded in. Orion's valuation dropped 12% in half an hour. Investors were bailing faster than rats off a sinking ship. At 8:37 a.m., the doorbell rang. I froze, half expecting another late-night visit from corporate enforcers. Ethan opened it cautiously. This time, it wasn't Orion. It was Patrick, my attorney. Tall, calm, raincoat dripping. "It's chaos downtown," he said, stepping inside. "Orion's legal team filed an emergency injunction at 7:45. They're trying to halt your payout." I smirked. They can't. Blockchain Ledger already initiated the transaction window. Even if a judge wanted to, no human can override that protocol now. Patrick nodded, setting his briefcase down. "I figured as much, but they're desperate. They might come after you next. Character assassination, slander, defamation." "Let them," I said. "Their problem isn't my reputation. It's their signature on a contract they never read." We sat at the kitchen table, the digital clock between us ticking down like a metronome of inevitability. "You know, Patrick said, I've never seen someone outthink an entire board of executives with a single clause." I smiled faintly. That clause wasn't mine. It was Harold's. I just honored it. "Still," he said, "you're about to become the most powerful independent data scientist in the Northwest." "Or the most hated," I muttered. He shrugged. "Sometimes they're the same thing." By 9:10, news networks had picked up the story. Screens lit up across the country. Orion Biotech CEO under fire over IP breach, merger in jeopardy. Footage showed Nathan entering the Orion building, face pale, ignoring questions. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Cross, did you unlawfully terminate Dr. Jensen to avoid a payout?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. because every word would tighten the noose. I turned the volume up just in time to hear a financial analyst say, if these claims are true, Nova Farm will have grounds to sue for fraud, effectively ending the merger and potentially bankrupting Orion within weeks. I felt a shiver of vindication, not joy, the kind of justice that tastes metallic, satisfying but heavy. At 9:35 a.m., my email chimed. It was Nathan. Subject line, "Stop this before it's too late." I opened it. His message was short, furious, almost pleading. "Laura, you don't understand the magnitude of what you're doing. We can fix this. Name your number, reinstatement, full title, equity. Just don't let this transfer go through." I stared at the screen, the irony burning. For years, he'd spoken to me like I was replaceable. Now he was begging like a man drowning in his own arrogance. I typed only one sentence. "You already signed your fate on Wednesday." Then I hit send and deleted the thread. The clock read 9:56:22. Ethan and Patrick stood beside me. No one spoke. The rain had slowed outside, leaving the air heavy and clean. "Whatever happens next," Ethan said quietly, "you did what was right." I nodded, fingers hovering over the laptop as the seconds melted away. At 10:000, the screen blinked, a soft tone, a flash of blue light, transfer confirmed. The ledger completed, funds deposited, clause executed, ownership of Helix 9 reverted instantly to me, Laura Jensen, sole inventor and license holder. Patrick exhaled, almost reverently. "It's done," he whispered. "Orion no longer owns Helix 9. I opened the dashboard to verify. The U.S. Patent Office update had already gone live. The official entry read, "Transfer of rights completed, Jensen Laura E., effective immediately." I clicked Publish Notice, sending the digital confirmation to Nova Farms board, Orion's executives, and 3 federal registries, simultaneously. In less than 5 minutes, a $300 million merger unraveled completely. By 10:12, news networks had picked up the story. Screens lit up across the country. Orion Biotech CEO under fire over IP breach, merger in jeopardy. Footage showed Nathan entering the Orion building, face pale, ignoring questions. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Cross, did you unlawfully terminate Dr. Jensen to avoid a payout?" He didn't answer. He couldn't, because every word would tighten the noose. I turned the volume up just in time to hear a financial analyst say, if these claims are true, Nova Farm will have grounds to sue for fraud, effectively ending the merger and potentially bankrupting Orion within weeks. I felt a shiver of vindication, not joy, the kind of justice that tastes metallic, satisfying but heavy. By afternoon, Orion's headquarters was surrounded by reporters, drones buzzing overhead. Photos of Nathan leaving the building in silence flooded every feed. He looked smaller somehow, his confidence gone, his legacy reduced to scandal. The man who thought he could erase me had instead erased himself. That night, I sat on the porch with Ethan, a quiet calm settling in. "So it's over?" he asked. "The merger is. The war isn't. Are you planning another move?" "No," I said. "Just preparation. The biotech world will come knocking soon enough. They'll want Helix 9, and this time they'll have to play fair." He smiled. "And if they don't?" I took a sip of wine, watching lightning flash in the distance. "Then they'll learn what Nathan learned. Don't try to steal from the woman who built the system." Somewhere downtown, the lights of Orion Biotech flickered off one by one. The building that once symbolized power now looked like a mausoleum, a grave for arrogance, greed, and short-sighted ambition. The storm outside finally broke, thunder echoing through the city like applause. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not victorious, just free. By Monday morning, the world had a new villain and a new legend. Nathan Cross was the disgraced CEO whose arrogance killed a $300 million merger, and I was the rogue scientist who had engineered his downfall. Every outlet told a different version of the story. Some called me reckless, others called me brave. But no one could deny the truth. I held the patents, the data, and the code that could redefine genomic AI. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't answering to anyone. Still, freedom had a price. My inbox was overflowing. Law firms, venture capitalists, journalists, even ex-colleagues pretending they'd always believed in me. Every ping of a new message felt like static in my skull. Ethan filtered through the noise while I brewed coffee strong enough to keep my thoughts from unraveling. Camille says CNBC wants you live tomorrow, he said, scrolling through a tablet. Also, a hedge fund out of Boston offered a private jet and a blank check for Helix 9 rights. Pass on both, I said. Let them sweat. The longer they wait, the higher the value climbs. He looked up. Laura, this isn't just buzz. You're sitting on the most coveted IP in North America. You could name your price and retire. I smiled faintly. And let another Nathan buy me out? No, not this time. The truth was, I didn't trust anyone, not yet. Not after what I seen behind those glassed walls at Orion. They weren't innovators, they were scavengers. They'd sell progress for a quarterly report. They'd destroy integrity for optics. And if I handed Helix 9 to another corporate giant, I'd be signing its death certificate all over again. I needed something different, a team built on conviction, not control. Around noon, Patrick called. His tone was clipped, almost surgical. They're coming after you, Laura. Orion's board filed a civil injunction this morning. On what grounds? Defamation, IP interference, and breach of confidentiality. It's all smoke, but they're trying to stall you. They can't stall the truth, I said. They can make noise, he countered. And noise influences markets, which means if they can't win legally, they'll try financially. I walked to the window watching the clouds roll over the skyline. Let them try. I don't scare easy. He sighed. You should, just a little. You're not dealing with a man anymore. You're dealing with a corporation desperate to survive. That night, I met Camille at a rooftop bar overlooking the bay. The air was cool, the city lights dancing in reflections across her wine glass. You've gone viral, she said, smirking. There's a meme of you labeled the claws clean. Half the tech world loves you, the other half wants your head. And which half do you belong to, I asked. Whichever one gets the best headline, she said. Then her expression softened. You did the impossible, Laura. You exposed them. But the question is, what now? I watched the ferries drift under the bridge, lights flickering on the water. Now, I built something that can't be stolen, I said. A foundation that belongs to the scientist, not the shareholders. Camille raised her eyebrow. You sound like you're planning a revolution. Maybe I am, I said. But this time, I'll choose my battlefield. The next morning, I woke to find 3 offers waiting in my inbox. One from a Silicon Valley biotech firm, one from a pharmaceutical giant in Zurich, and one marked Confidential, Government Liaison, DC. Each offered sums that made my old Orion salary look like pocket change, but each came with the same hidden message, control. They wanted Helix 9 in exchange for promises, and I'd learned what promises were worth. Instead, I called Ethan into my office. We're not selling, I said. We're scaling. He frowned. With what capital? Ours, I replied. We liquidate the bonus, reinvest into a private lab under a new name. And what name is that? I turned to the whiteboard and wrote in clean black ink, Nova Ethic. Nova for new, ethic for what biotech forgot, I said. We'll recruit carefully, engineers, analysts, clinical researchers, people who still care about truth, not profit. Ethan leaned against the desk, smiling. You really think people like that still exist? They do, I said. They're just buried under NDAs and burnout. By afternoon, Patrick had drawn up the LLC paperwork. Camille leaked hints of my next project to the press, just enough to stir curiosity, but not enough to reveal anything real. Within hours, my inbox filled again, this time from messages from disillusioned researchers, whistleblowers, and ex-Orion employees begging to join. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who once turned away from me now wanted to follow. That night, a message appeared in my encrypted inbox. No name, no signature, just a simple subject line. I know what Orion hid. Attached was a single PDF, heavily redacted internal memos, timelines, and something labeled Project Argon. My pulse quickened as I scrolled. It referenced Helix 9's earlier prototypes, test runs I never authorized, and one line that froze me. Subject trials conducted under Orion's South Bay facility, unauthorized, undocumented. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. Unauthorized trials. On what or who? My breath came slow, deliberate. Nathan hadn't just stolen data, he'd weaponized it. Ethan entered, seeing my face pale. What happened? I turned the laptop toward him. They use Helix 9 for human experimentation. He blinked, stunned. That's impossible. You designed it for predictive sequencing, not application. Exactly, I whispered. They twisted the code. The revelation hit me like a slow detonation. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about ethics, responsibility, the sanctity of science. Orion's fall wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something darker unraveling beneath the surface. Camille called minutes later, voice sharp. Laura, don't open anything else. If that file's legit, you've just stepped into federal territory. Then we step carefully. No leaks, no panic. We verify first. As the night deepened, I backed up every document, encrypted the drives, and locked them in the safe. The rain started again, outside. Soft, rhythmic, ominous. Ethan stood beside me, quiet. If this is true, he said, you're not just up against Orion anymore. I know. But they made one mistake. What's that? They underestimated the woman who built the code. Somewhere downtown, lights still burned in Orion's legal offices. I imagined Nathan pacing, watching his empire burn, unaware that the worst secret hadn't even surfaced yet. And as the clock struck midnight, I realized something terrifying. My revenge had only scratched the surface of a much deeper rot. The war hadn't ended. It had just changed its name.
Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. By Tuesday dawn, my apartment felt like the nerve center of a covert operation. Laptops humming, screens casting blue light across walls lined with notes and encryption keys. Ethan brewed coffee while I scanned through the redacted documents for the 100th time. Project Argon. Even the name sounded clinical, deceptive, chosen to hide something monstrous beneath bureaucratic gloss. The memo referenced genomic trial candidates, predictive mapping, and cellular overrides. It wasn't gene therapy, it was gene control. My code, my sequence algorithms, had been twisted into a tool to manipulate biology itself. Not to heal, but to own. The thought made my stomach turn. Every line of code I'd written had been designed for medical precision, to detect disease before it began, to help humanity predict its vulnerabilities. Orion had turned that dream into a weapon. I looked at Ethan. If this is real, I said slowly, they experimented on people without consent. He nodded grimly. And if we go public with this, they'll bury it and us. I exhaled, steady but sharp. Then we don't go public, not yet. We build proof. Data doesn't lie, people do. By mid-morning, Camille arrived unannounced, trench coat soaked from rain, hair wild from the wind. She tossed a flash drive on a counter. You're not the only one getting anonymous gifts, she said. This came from someone inside Orion's PR team. Internal chat logs, deleted press drafts, legal directives. They're planning a counterattack. I plugged the drive in, scrolling through the chaos. Fake stories linking me to Nova Farm, fabricated leaks framing me as a corporate saboteur, even a draft statement claiming I'd stolen Helix 9 outright. Camille poured herself a drink, voice flat. They're turning you into the villain. Let them try, I said. Truth doesn't need permission to exist. But inside, I knew perception was power, and Orion had money, media reach, and a deep bench of allies. They could twist a headline before the facts even hit daylight. I needed something stronger than words, something undeniable. We'll show the data, I told Ethan, not the story, the evidence, full audit logs, access records, timestamps from their servers. If we expose Project Argon scientifically, no PR machine can bury it. That afternoon, we set up the secure relay. Ethan handled the hardware, Camille handled the media blackout. Patrick coordinated with a small network of federal ethics attorneys who still believed in the rule of law. The deeper we dug, the clearer the picture became. Orion had been running predictive genome tests on live human subjects, dozens, possibly hundreds, most under the guise of clinical outreach trials overseas. Some of the names listed weren't patients at all. They were employees. At 6:45 p.m., Ethan looked up from his monitor. Laura, he said quietly, one of the data logs has your code key embedded. I froze. Mine? Yeah, the algorithm tag LJ09X. That's your signature from the prototype phase. I felt my pulse rise. That means they used my credentials to authorize the trials? Or forge them, he said. Either way, the system shows you gave the green light. My heart hammered. That was it. Their move. They weren't just protecting themselves. They were framing me. Patrick called minutes later. Laura, we've got a problem, he said. A federal notice to struct. Orion filed a criminal complaint. They're alleging you hacked their database and manipulated proprietary data. If this sticks, it's felony level. My hands tightened around the phone. They're rewriting reality, I whispered. And they're using my own code to do it. Camille slammed her glass down. Then we hit back first, she said. Drop everything, every log, every memo, every redacted file. Give it to every journalist who isn't bought. No, I said firmly. If we go public now, we lose control of the narrative. They'll bury it under disinformation. We leak when the evidence is irrefutable. Ethan looked at me, tension in his eyes. And what if they come for you before then? Then they'll have to find me first. That night, we packed the core servers, transferring everything to a rented workspace outside the city, a repurposed warehouse that smelled of metal and rain. It was the perfect kind of anonymity, too small for suspicion, too quiet for attention. I set up a secure terminal, coded 3 layers of encryption, and began to reconstruct the Helix 9 lineage from scratch. Every timestamp, every modification, every authorization trail. It would take days, but when finished, it would prove beyond question that I was the original architect, not the saboteur. While I worked, Camille monitored Orion's collapse in real time. Their stock had fallen another 22%. Board members were resigning. Anonymous sources were feeding the press new details about Nathan's leadership failures. He'd gone underground. No public appearances, no statements. Just silence. But silence, I knew, was strategy. He was waiting for the right moment to strike. At 2:14 a.m., the secure line blinked. An incoming transmission. The sender's code was familiar. Harold W. Jensen. My breath caught. My father's digital key. Impossible. He'd been gone for 5 years. I opened the message. No text, no greeting, just an attached file. argonorigin.vp. I hesitated, scanning for malware. Nothing. I opened it. Inside was a video feed, grainy, time-stamped, and unmistakable. My father, alive, speaking directly into the camera. Laura, he said, if you're seeing this, they found my research. Orion wasn't just funding Helix 9. They were replicating it, weaponizing it. Project Argon is their failsafe. It uses adaptive code seeded in genomic trials. You must destroy it before they deploy. Trust no one inside the system. The screen glitched, his image fading. He said, they'll tell you I'm dead. Maybe I am, but if not, find South Bay. That's where it began. The feed ended. I sat frozen, every muscle locked. Ethan stared at the screen. That's him, he whispered. Laura, what does that mean? I swallowed hard. It means this isn't just corporate corruption. It's legacy. My father knew. He built part of it and tried to stop them. The room went silent except for the hum of the hard drives. Then Camille spoke, voice flat. So what do we do now? I looked up, eyes cold and certain. We finish what he started. The plan crystallized instantly, locate the South Bay facility, extract the physical data cores, and expose Project Argon to the world. On our terms, not a leak, a reckoning. As dawn broke over the bay, I stood by the window of that makeshift lab, watching the city wake beneath gray clouds. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the smell of aftermath, wet asphalt and unfinished business. Ethan handed me a cup of coffee. You really think you can bring down what's left of Orion? He asked. Not bring down, I said softly. Erase. I opened my laptop, loading the last trace of my father's message. His final words echoed in my mind. Trust no one inside the system. And as the first sunlight hit the skyline, I realized something with terrifying clarity. Nathan wasn't the true enemy. He was just a pawn. The real architects were still out there, guarding Argon, waiting for me to make a move. I smiled faintly. Let them wait, I whispered. I built the system once. I can break it again. And somewhere, far below the waking city, in a locked facility that no one was supposed to know existed, a single status light flickered on. Argon active.